All right, ready to dive in. Today, it's all about fasting,
Fasting, yeah.
specifically how it might help our hearts.
It's pretty amazing, actually, all this recent attention on fasting.
Yeah, it's like this ancient practice
Right.
suddenly getting all this scientific validation.
Well, and it's not like just some fad diet.
Right.
This has been around for centuries.
Absolutely, yeah.
Part of so many cultures, right?
Yeah.
For religious reasons or spiritual.
hmm
And now we're starting to see why, like, scientifically, it has all these benefits.
Exactly. Like for your heart, especially, we actually have some research to dig into today.
Okay, yeah.
A 2019 review, it was published in the journal Nurse,
Uh-huh.
and they looked at 15 different studies to see, like, what's the real impact of fasting?
On people with and without heart problems.
Exactly.
That's a good spread.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
And I mean, the results are kind of mind-blowing. Like, what if there was this natural way
Yeah.
to boost your heart health?
Manage weight, maybe even help your body repair itself.
Yeah,
That's what we're going to unpack today.
that's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, but before we get into all those cool
Yeah.
findings,
Yeah.
let's just define what do we mean by fasting?
Right. Good point. Not just skipping a meal here or there.
Yeah.
The studies in this review, they looked at different types, right?
Mm-hmm.
So things like Ramadan, which a lot of people are probably familiar with,
Mm-hmm.
and then something called alternate day fasting.
Okay, so with Ramadan, most people know, right?
Yeah.
No food or drink from dawn until sunset for like a whole month.
Right. Observed by millions of people worldwide.
Yeah, exactly. But alternate day fasting, that sounds a little more
Intense.
intense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different approach for sure. So basically, you're restricting calories every other day.
Every other day.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's usually like down to 25% of your normal intake.
Oh, wow.
So we're talking like 500 calories.
Yeah, that's a big change.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Okay, but let's get to those potential benefits.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things that jumped out, at least for me, was the impact on weight management.
Oh, yeah.
It seemed like across a lot of the studies, people were seeing really good results there.
Absolutely. So multiple studies didn't matter what type of fasting they were doing.
Oh, wow.
It was pretty consistent. People who fasted, they lost a significant amount of weight.
Makes sense
Yeah.
when you think about the core principle, right?
It's not magic.
Right.
It's really about the calorie intake.
Yeah.
So fasting helps you manage weight because
Okay.
it kind of puts this natural limit on how many calories you're taking in every day.
Yeah.
Built-in system to stop overeating, and over time, that's how you get to a healthier weight.
So, if you're looking to manage weight, maybe this is something to explore.
Could be a good option.
Of course, talk to your doctor
Always.
before making any major dietary changes. Okay, let's move on to another key thing for heart health. Blood pressure.
Yeah.
There was one study in this review that found Ramadan fasting could actually lower blood pressure in people with hypertension.
Yeah, and it's not just about those calories.
Wow.
So fasting can actually affect your hormones directly.
Oh, wow.
Helps prevent the release of some hormones that can contribute to high blood pressure.
So it's like a natural regulator.
Sort of, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. It's like our bodies have this power to regulate themselves, and fasting just sort of kicks it in.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, but important to remember, this doesn't mean ditch your meds if you're on blood pressure medication.
Right, no, never replace prescribed medication with fasting.
Absolutely not.
Talk to your healthcare provider.
Yeah,
It's all about finding what's right for you.
exactly. They can tell you if fasting is safe, if it would help.
As a complementary approach.
Right. So think of fasting as a tool in your toolbox, but always check with your doctor.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move on. Another big one for heart health, cholesterol. I was super interested in the finding that fasting seemed to help with, like, LDL cholesterol.
Uh-huh. The bad cholesterol, right?
The bad one.
Yeah, and that's important, right? Because high LDL, that's a major risk for heart disease. So think of LDL cholesterol as this kind of troublemaker in your blood. Builds up in your arteries, starts forming plaque, restricts blood flow.
And that increases your risk of a heart attack or stroke.
Exactly.
Scary stuff.
Yeah.
So if fasting can help lower those LDL levels, it's like you're proactively protecting your heart.
You got it.
Right.
Yeah, so lowering it through lifestyle changes like fasting could be a really powerful way to reduce your risk.
It's like giving your heart a fighting chance. Okay, so we've got weight, we've got blood pressure, we've got cholesterol.
Mm-hmm.
I want to dive into something that really got me curious. How fasting affects the health of our blood vessels.
Ooh, yeah, this is where it gets interesting.
Yeah.
So the review, they found evidence that fasting could actually make the endothelium function better.
Endothelium. Remind me, what's that?
It's the lining of your blood vessels.
Yeah.
Super delicate. Think of it as like the wallpaper inside your arteries and veins.
Okay.
It keeps everything smooth.
So our blood vessels are like the highways, and the endothelium's the pavement.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And when that pavement gets damaged or it doesn't work right,
Uh-huh.
problems like atherosclerosis, where plaque builds up and the arteries narrow.
Right.
What's remarkable is that fasting may actually be helping to keep that lining healthier and more flexible,
Huh.
potentially reducing those risks.
Wow. So it's not just what's in our blood, it's the actual structure of our blood vessels.
Exactly. And it shows you how everything in our bodies is connected. And fasting might be tapping into some really deep mechanisms for repair and rejuvenation.
It makes you wonder, right,
It does.
about all this untapped potential our bodies have to heal.
Yeah.
But important note, this review, it really focused on Ramadan and alternate day fasting.
Right.
There are other types out there, and we're still learning a lot about their benefits and risks.
Oh, yeah. The research is constantly evolving.
Right.
New stuff all the time. And of course, can't emphasize this enough. Talk to your doctor
Yeah.
before making big changes to your diet or lifestyle.
Definitely. It's about what works for you and a healthcare professional who knows your needs, your health history.
Exactly.
Okay, before we move on, I'm curious about some of the specific findings.
Yeah.
There were things about inflammation and oxidative stress, right?
Yes.
What did they see there?
Yeah, let's take a closer look. So there was this one study in the review. They looked specifically at healthy people who did Ramadan fasting.
Okay.
And they found that after like a month of fasting, there was a significant drop in some markers of inflammation.
Like what kind of markers?
IL-1, IL-6, and TNF-alpha. Those were the big ones.
Okay, those sound a little like a chemistry experiment. What are those? And why do we care?
Right. So those, the IL-1, IL-6, TNF-alpha, think of those as like little messengers in your body.
Messengers.
Yeah, they're signaling inflammation.
Yeah.
Now, some inflammation is normal. It's part of healing.
Right.
But when it's chronic, it's like having this low-grade fire, just smoldering inside you.
That doesn't sound good.
No, and it contributes to all sorts of health problems, heart disease being one of them.
So finding ways to naturally reduce those markers is pretty important.
Huge, especially for heart health. And this study suggests that Ramadan fasting could be one way to do that.
Really interesting.
And it gets even cooler. So they also looked at oxidative stress.
Oxidative stress.
Yeah, think of it as rust forming inside your body.
Oh, yikes.
Damages cells, contributes to aging, all sorts of diseases.
Okay, so not good.
No. And they measured this marker called malondialdehyde, or MDA.
Okay, what happened to MDA levels after fasting? Did they go down too?
You got it.
Seems like we're seeing a pattern here.
Right. Fasting acted kind of like an antioxidant in this case, like protecting against that cellular damage.
That's pretty amazing, that just changing when you eat can have these effects on your body.
It is. It really speaks to the power of our bodies to adapt, to find balance.
Yeah.
And speaking of balance, this study also noted some interesting things about blood sugar.
Really?
Yeah. So fasting blood glucose levels actually went down in the healthy people who fasted for Ramadan.
Huh. Do you think that means this could be good for people with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it needs more research, for sure. This study was just on healthy people.
Mm-hmm.
But it definitely hints that fasting might play a role in blood sugar management for those at risk for diabetes or who have it.
It's exciting to think about all these possibilities.
It is.
Okay, I know we talked a lot about cholesterol,
Mm-hmm.
but what about triglycerides?
Ah, good point.
That's another type of fat in our blood, right?
Right.
High levels of that are also linked to heart disease.
They are, yeah. High triglycerides, definitely a concern.
Did this review look into that at all?
They did, actually. And the good news is several studies showed a decrease in triglycerides after fasting.
Really?
Yep. Both Ramadan and alternate day fasting seem to have that effect.
So just to be clear, what we've seen so far,
Yeah.
fasting seems to have good effects on
Yeah.
weight, blood pressure, cholesterol, blood vessel health, inflammation, oxidative
Let's
stress,
keep going.
and now triglycerides.
You got it. It's quite a list.
It is. And this isn't just like people saying they feel better. This is based on real studies.
Right. Actual scientific studies, measuring these things, getting results.
So it paints a pretty good picture of how fasting could benefit your overall health, especially your heart.
I think so.
I have to say, I'm feeling pretty inspired to maybe try this myself. But before I jump on the bandwagon, I do want to be realistic.
Yeah.
It's not going to be for everyone.
Definitely not. It's
It-
important to have a balanced perspective. It can be beneficial, but it's not suitable for everyone. There are certain people who definitely should not fast. And even for healthy people, there are things to consider, potential side effects.
Okay, so let's talk about those precautions.
All right.
What should people keep in mind if they're thinking about fasting?
First and foremost, talk to your doctor,
Okay, that's number one.
especially if you have any health conditions.
Yeah, makes sense. But are there any specific groups who should absolutely not fast without talking to a doctor?
Yeah, so pregnant or breastfeeding women, people with a history of eating disorders, anyone on certain medications, people with diabetes, kidney disease, liver disease, those are all situations where you need to be extra careful and get personalized advice.
Sounds like it's always better to be safe than sorry.
Absolutely. Your doctor can help you figure out if fasting is safe and appropriate for you.
Okay, so let's say you get the green light from your doctor. Are there still downsides?
Potentially, yeah.
What are some of the things people might experience when they fast?
So some common side effects are things like headaches, dizziness, fatigue, low blood sugar. Usually these are temporary. Your body kind of adjusts. But if you experience anything severe or if you're worried about something, definitely break your fast.
You don't want to push it too far.
Right. Listen to your body.
Yeah.
And it's not just physical, right? Fasting can affect you mentally and emotionally too.
Oh, right. How so?
Well, some people say they feel more focused, energized. Others might get irritable or have mood swings. It really varies.
So pay attention to how you feel
Exactly.
and maybe adjust your schedule or how you're fasting if you need to.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot, getting those benefits without feeling awful.
Right, exactly.
And it's important to remember, fasting, it's not a quick fix. It's more like a lifestyle change that can support your overall well-being.
I like that. It's about being mindful and intentional about when and what you eat.
I agree. And, beyond the physical stuff, a lot of cultures have used fasting for centuries for spiritual reasons, right?
Yeah. Right? It can be a time to look inward, reflect, maybe connect with something bigger than yourself.
I love that health is more than just our bodies.
Yeah. And speaking of those deeper levels, there was another study in this review. It looked at fasting in middle-aged adults who had hypertension.
Oh, so these were people already at risk for heart disease.
Exactly. And what they found was that Ramadan fasting, when used with their medication, actually helped to lower both body weight and blood pressure even more.
Oh, wow. So like a bonus effect.
Kind of, yeah, potentially. Enhancing what their medication was already doing.
That's really promising.
It is. Of course, we always have to be careful, right? One study doesn't tell the whole story. But it does suggest that fasting could play a role in managing hypertension, like alongside your regular treatment, another tool to help you take control of your heart health.
Yeah, and I like how this points to natural approaches working with conventional medicine. It's not one or the other.
Exactly. It's about finding the right balance for each person. Exactly. This study, did they look at any other markers for heart health?
They did. So they found that fasting led to a decrease in serum amyloid A. That's a marker of inflammation.
So even in people with an existing heart condition, we're still seeing that anti-inflammatory effects.
Right. Consistent theme.
Yeah.
And they also found a decrease in protein carbonyl levels.
What's that one?
That's a marker of oxidative stress. So those rust-preventing benefits, those seem to apply here too.
So it's like a 2-for-1.
Exactly. Reducing inflammation and protecting against damage. And then, this is really cool, they found that fasting improved the levels of something called asymmetric dimethylarginine, or ADMA.
Okay, I have to admit, I have no idea what that is.
Don't worry, it's a mouthful. But the key thing to know is that ADMA is a marker for endothelial dysfunction.
Right, which we talked about earlier. That can lead to atherosclerosis and all those other problems.
Exactly.
So if fasting helps lower ADMA, that's a good thing.
It is, yeah. It means it's helping improve the health and function of those blood vessels.
Okay, makes sense. Anything else they looked at?
One more thing, and this is fascinating. They found that fasting increased levels of vascular endothelial growth factor.
Vascular endothelial.
Growth factor.
I need a reminder. What's that one do again?
So VEGF, it's like a signal that tells your body to make new blood vessels.
New blood vessels.
Yeah, like a construction crew for your circulatory system.
Okay.
And that's important, right? For healthy circulation, for repairing any damage.
So if fasting boosts VEGF, it's giving your heart and blood vessels what they need to stay strong and healthy.
You got it. It's really remarkable. It seems like fasting is stimulating your body's own repair mechanisms.
Wow, that is pretty mind-blowing. Makes you wonder what other benefits there might be that we haven't even discovered yet.
Right.
Okay, before we wrap things up, I want to touch on something you said earlier about how many cultures have used fasting for spiritual or religious reasons. It makes me wonder if there are mental and spiritual benefits too.
It's a fascinating question, and I think it deserves more attention, honestly. We've been talking a lot about the physical changes, but what about the effects on our minds, our spirits?
It's pretty amazing to think about. Something as simple as fasting. It's been around for so long,
I know, right?
and it could have such a big impact on our bodies and our minds.
It really makes you think about all those traditional practices.
Yeah.
How they often line up with what science is finding now.
Exactly. Okay, but before we all get too excited and jump into fasting,
Right.
we should talk about the practical side of things.
Yeah, good point. Like with any lifestyle change, you gotta be smart about it, right?
Yeah.
Fasting, it's not a magic solution.
No.
And it's not for everyone. There are definitely some precautions to keep in mind.
So what are some things people should think about before trying it?
Well, like we said before, talk to your doctor first.
Especially if you have any health issues.
Exactly. But even beyond that, just in general, listen to your body.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Fasting, it can be tough,
Mm-hmm.
physically and mentally. Be kind to yourself if you're super tired or dizzy, lightheaded, any weird symptoms.
You stop.
Yeah, break the fast. Don't try to push through it if you're feeling really bad.
Don't be a hero.
Right, exactly. It's about finding what works for you. Start slow, maybe with a shorter fasting window,
Uh-huh.
and you can gradually increase it as you get used to it. Oh, and stay hydrated. That's super important.
Water, right.
Lots of water. Unsweetened drinks, too.
Makes sense. It's like, starting a new workout routine.
Yeah.
You don't just jump into running a marathon.
Right.
Got to build up to it.
Exactly. And just like with exercise, pay attention to how you feel during a fast.
Mentally and emotionally too, right?
Yeah, if you're getting irritable, moody, or having trouble thinking straight,
Yeah.
it might be a sign you need to adjust something.
So it's about finding that balance, right?
Yeah.
Where you're getting benefits but not feeling terrible.
Exactly. And that sweet spot, it's going to be different for everyone,
I guess that's true for a lot of things in life.
right? There's no one right way to fast. Different types, different fasting windows, Experiment a little, see what feels good and what you can stick with.
That makes sense. Okay, but we've been talking a lot about the physical stuff.
Yeah,
What about the mental and spiritual side of fasting? We touched on that a bit.
we did. And I think it's worth talking about more. Fasting has been used for centuries in so many cultures and religions as a way to connect spiritually, to have more self-discipline, to find inner peace.
And those things are hard to measure with, like scientific studies,
Right.
but they're still important.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to acknowledge those aspects
Yeah.
because a lot of people find that fasting helps them feel more grounded, more connected to themselves, maybe even closer to their spirituality.
It's like making space for yourself
Yeah.
to think, to reflect, to get away from all the noise and craziness of life.
I love that. That's a great way to put it. And in our world, we need that more than ever, I think.
Absolutely. So it's not just about what you're not eating.
Right.
It's about what you might gain,
Yeah,
like self-awareness, inner peace, a connection to something bigger.
exactly. And those benefits, they can spill over into other parts of your life too.
Really?
Yeah, relationships, your creative side, even your sense of purpose.
Wow. It's pretty incredible to think that something as simple as changing when you eat
Uh-huh.
can have those kinds of effects
Ugh.
on your whole being, really.
I know. It really shows how everything's connected.
Well, this has been fascinating. As we wrap up our deep dive into fasting,
Mm-hmm.
I want to thank you for sharing all your insights and knowledge with us.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep finding ways to nourish your body, mind, and spirit.
Yeah, that's great advice. The journey to better health, it never really ends.
That's so true. There's always something new to learn.
Always.